Hi, this is Anders from Herald Hobbies, and today we're gonna make this from this. Dungeon tiles. Great for your dungeoneering, dungeon crawly games of D&D, Pathfinder, ECD6 or similar. And that's what I'm gonna be making in this video. And I'm gonna try and make them magnetic so they don't slide around all over the table, which is very annoying. So follow along as I go through the steps of making these simple and cool dungeon tiles. To cut out my dungeon tiles, I'm using my trusty Proxxon wire cutter. Now, if you don't have a wire cutter, then just use a sharp knife and a ruler and you can accomplish the same thing. It's just going to take you a little bit longer than with a wire cutter. I'm making these dungeon tiles 8 by 8 centimeters and 1 centimeter thick. So that'll give me a 3 by 3 grid for my players to place down their miniatures, and I can place some pretty big monsters as well, which will be very excellent. To easily cut out the grid in the foam tiles, I'm just going to adjust my wire cutter to a width of 2.5 centimeters, which is roughly 1 inch. And holding the tile vertically, I'm going to gently move it into the wire to create a line across the tile. And then I'm simply just going to turn the tile around a couple of times, and then I have the grid laid out into the tile. Simple. And yeah, I ended up making a whole bunch. A downside to these tiles being made of XPS foam is that they're very light, and therefore they easily get knocked around on the table and get misaligned. And that's why I'm gonna use magnets to make them more stable when they're connected. And I start out by putting a magnet in each corner on every side, but I actually quite quickly realized that I might just solve this by putting a magnet in the center of each side of the tile, effectively cutting down 50% of the magnets used for this project, which is a pretty big deal. These kind of magnets are not inexpensive. I'm attaching the magnets with super glue and moving them around with a small matchstick just to get them in place. If you want to do the same thing, just be mindful that super glue will dissolve this foam, so you gotta work a little bit quick and don't use too much of it. After the quite time-consuming task of magnetizing these tiles, I was actually quite excited to finally test them out and see them snap together. However, this is where things took a turn for the worse, because I had not accounted for magnet polarity. So every side of the tile would have the same polarity, which means that these tiles would not snap together in the grid. And figuring this out, I just lost hope in magnetizing this. I couldn't really figure out at this point in time like how to do this properly, even though it's actually quite simple, but I was just so frustrated. So I decided to just say, screw this, I'm not gonna magnetize these dungeon tiles, and instead find another way to make them stable. Feeling defeated and slightly embarrassed by the absolute travesty of magnetizing these tiles, I instead carry on with texturing the tiles, and I'm just doing this by rolling up some tinfoil and rolling that all over the surface of these tiles. I then move on to coating the tiles with a mixture of PLA glue, water and matte black paint. And I do this for two reasons. Firstly, this coat will dry and actually enhance the strength and durability of these tiles so that they won't get scratched up as easily when we throw them around on the table and so on. Secondly, and most importantly, this coating is going to create a seal that will keep the foam from being exposed to the primer that I'm going to be using in the next step. These primers usually have a propellant in them that can actually dissolve this XPS foam, and therefore it's a good idea to seal it in with some kind of layer before you go to prime them. Letting the coat dry for a little while, these bad boys are now ready to get primed, so let's prime them. That's better. Now we're ready for painting. this is by far the least time-consuming step of this entire process of making these tiles. I'm just going to use 3 different paints, a grey tone, a brown, and a lighter grey tone. I'm starting out with dry brushing with the darkest grey just all over the tiles, giving a good even coating. Then afterwards going over with a smaller dry brush, dabbing in some brown, just to give a bit of texture and depth to the tiles. And then lastly, I'm taking a lighter grey and I'm just gonna brush that over, dry brushing again, and that will highlight everything and kind of tie the 2 underlying colors together. With this simple paint job, these tiles are actually looking quite good already. The texture job I did really pays off now. But I want to do something a little bit more. I want to add some moss effect to this. And to do that, I'm just going to use some turf and some PVA glue. Super simple. Let me show you how. Using green turf mixed with PVA glue and then diluted with some water, I create a slurry that I will apply on my tiles in a semi-random fashion, just trying to get it into spots where I think it'll look nice. And most importantly here, it's just to make it seem a little bit random so it looks natural. Once this slurry dries, it's gonna look like moss, but the PVA glue will leave a glossy coat. So I'm gonna go over the tiles with a matte varnish just to eliminate this glossy look. And that's it. Moss. Simple. Technically the tiles are done now, but I haven't actually solved the issue that I wanted to solve in this video. You know, making sure that the tiles don't fly around on the table if there's a slight breeze or somebody knocks something over. So I thought, what do I do? What do I do to solve this? And then it came to me. I had to go to the one place that could solve this issue. The Doom Fortress called IKEA. On this day, this hellish cesspool of furniture and infant cries was particularly full of people, so I hastily moved onwards to the section where I knew I could find my solution to my troubles. It's anti-slip netting. With treasure in hand, I deftly exit the haunted corridors of the Doom Fortress called IKEA, and I marvel at the amazing amount of people that can gather in such a small place. It's truly horrifying to think of that. Oh my goodness, oh my god. Oh shit! I glued on the netting with some PVA glue and let it sit until dry, and now my tiles don't slip around as much. Although I would have preferred doing the magnets approach, but maybe for another time. But overall, I'm quite happy with the result. I think these tiles look pretty damn decent, and they're gonna be a great addition to my future D&D games. I hope you liked what you saw, and maybe you took some inspiration from this. In any case, give me a like if you want, subscribe if you want, and throw me a comment. Herald Hobbies, signing off.